Hello students, welcome to Learner's Planet. Let us continue with the class of biology. The topic yet we are discussing is microorganisms, friends and foe. In the previous session we had studied that how the microorganisms are useful to us. We have studied about the medicinal uses, domestic uses and the involvement of microorganisms at environmental level too. So let us continue the same part, that is the role at environmental level, and we will see that how these microorganisms are friends of environment also. So in the previous lecture we have understood that these microorganisms, they can help in cleaning up of the environment. How? By degrading or decomposing the waste material present in our surrounding. Besides, it can also help in the formation of compost, which can further help in agriculture or in increasing the soil fertility. Besides, we have studied that they can also increase the soil fertility directly. So we are continuing with the same topic. To increase the soil fertility, they are actually enriching the soil with nitrogen and other similar components. We had taken the example of nitrogen, and that's what we are going to continue in this particular session. In the previous session, we have studied that there are different classes of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, which actually help in increasing this particular fertility by converting the elemental form of nitrogen, that is N2, into the absorbable form, that is NO3 and NO2, that is oxides of nitrogen in short. And there are different groups of organisms which are actually helping out in this particular process. This process in which the elemental form of nitrogen is being converted to the usable form. That process is known as nitrogen fixation. Now, if the nitrogen is being consumed continuously, then it is going to end up with time. But this is not happening. This is actually maintained. The level of nitrogen in the atmosphere is constant and it is also being supplied to the living organisms for their growth. So, such biogeochemical cycle in which the level of nitrogen is maintained in the atmosphere by the or with the help of biotic and abiotic components is known as nitrogen cycle. We are continuously saying one thing, the level of nitrogen in the atmosphere is constant, but it is supplied to the living system and it is returned back to the system. And this particular process in which this give and take type of process is continued, that is known as the nitrogen cycle. Let us study the details of the nitrogen cycle now. We all know that in our surroundings, the space is present which is known as atmosphere, or the natural resource which is comprised of air is known as the atmosphere. This atmosphere is comprised of different type of gases. You know it very well. You are studying this thing since long. Let us just highlight it. Let us have a brief look over this concentration of various gases in the atmosphere. Oxygen 21%, nitrogen 78%, then carbon dioxide 0.03%, and so on. There are different gases with different concentration and that is actually constant. Now we are studying the nitrogen cycle. So what is the concentration of this nitrogen gas in the atmosphere? It is 78%. What is the role of nitrogen in the biotic system? How it is so important? So, this nitrogen is an essential component, an essential constituent of all the living organisms. You know why? It is because the living cells, they need the basic components, and these components chemically, they have nitrogen as one of its constituent. These organic compounds are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, etc. And the nitrogen is also one of the elements which is present in these components. Which components? These important components which are giving life to the living organism. which is helping in the maintenance of the living organisms. Can you think of several examples of such components? Like they are proteins. Like, you know where proteins are present? Plasma membrane. One of the good example. The plasma membrane is made up of lipids and proteins. And these proteins, they contain nitrogen as one of its constituent elements. Chlorophyll. You all know where chlorophyll is present? And what is the role of chlorophyll? It is present inside the chloroplast and it participates in the photosynthesis in plant cells. Besides, it is one of the important constituents of nucleic acids. You remember what are nucleic acids? DNA and RNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA, which is forming the genes or which is making the chromosomes. And you know how important these chromosomes are. So nitrogen, without nitrogen, nucleic acids could not be produced. They could not be generated by the cell. So similarly, we can say it is an example. It is an important essential part of vitamins also. Vitamin A, B, C, D, K, all are actually containing nitrogen as one of its component, besides carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So without nitrogen, we cannot think of a living system. Living organisms are made up of biomolecules, and one of the molecule of the element present in these molecules is nitrogen. So now you can think of that how much important this nitrogen is for the biotic system. Now the thing is, it is present at a high concentration in the environment, right? That is 78%. Then why can't we take this atmospheric nitrogen directly? We inhale the air. Don't you think it is quite easy? We are inhaling the air and air is having the nitrogen. Just absorb it and assimilate it in the different usable form. But this is not possible. The plants and animal physiology do not allow such type of consumption. We don't have such type of provision in our body which can actually absorb or which can consume the elemental form of nitrogen. We can use the oxides. Plants can use the oxides. Animals can also use it in different essential forms, in the form of proteins or amino acids or so on. But strictly N2, that is nitrogen gas, could not be strictly utilized by the living organisms. Now, the question is, how this absorption is possible? Then what is that form which could be utilized by the organisms? Atmospheric nitrogen is no. Then which type of nitrogen is yes? That means it is used up by the plants and animals. It is the oxides. It is actually the converted form of nitrogen in the form of oxides and so on. So these oxides are actually provided by the microorganisms. Therefore, the microorganisms are so important in our daily life. Besides, if we are continuously consuming the nitrogen, that 78% present in the air will go down to 0%. But practically it is not happening. Practically what is happening is elemental form is also returned back to the environment by different type of microorganisms. And thus the continuation of nitrogen cycle occurs. Now let us understand the various types of or various steps involved in the nitrogen cycle. That means conversion of N2 to the oxides and then conversion of oxides to the elemental form of nitrogen. So various steps involved in this particular cycle is number 1, nitrogen fixation, then assimilation, then comes ammonification, nitrification and denitrification. So these are the most important 5 common steps involved in the nitrogen cycle. Very first step, that is nitrogen fixation. What does it mean? We have studied it earlier also. It means conversion of elemental form of nitrogen into the usable form by various microorganisms. Now remember one thing, whenever we are using the word absorbable here, then it is meant for absorption by the plants actually. So the nitrogen fixation is one of the process in which the nitrogen is converted to the oxide by different type of organisms, microorganisms. Generally, the one which is present in the nodules of the plant or the one which is present in the soil. The next step is assimilation. In short, what we mean by an assimilation is, it is the conversion of the absorbed form of nitrogenous compound into the assimilated form, or conversion of these simpler nitrogenous compounds into the complex nitrogenous compound. Which is the simpler form? Like nitrates and the nitrates. Now which is the complex form? Like proteins, amino acids, vitamins, nucleic acids, and so on. Now where these elements are present? Inside the plant and the animal body. So definitely this process will occur inside the plant body or the animal body definitely. Next is ammonification. The word itself is suggesting it is the formation of ammonia. From where? From the waste coming out from the plant and the animal body. So the things which are being eliminated from the plant and the animal body, that sort of nitrogenous waste is further converted to the ammonia by the action of certain other kind of bacteria. Then comes nitrification. Nitrification is also the formation of oxides of nitrogen. But here the substrate would be ammonia. In the case of nitrogen fixation, oxides were being formed, but over there it was formed from the elemental form of nitrogen. In case of nitrification, it is formed from different other forms, not from nitrogen directly. Here one of the source could be ammonia. Then in the nitrification, again the nitrates are formed, which are reutilized by the plants from the soil, or it is further degraded by the different group of bacteria into the elemental form of nitrogen. So therefore the word D has been added here. That means nitrites converted back to the elemental form of nitrogen. Now let us have a look over the details of these steps, which organisms are involved and what happens actually here. So nitrogen fixation, we have already said, it means the conversion of elemental form of nitrogen into the usable compounds, that is like nitrites or the nitrates by the microorganisms. Which microorganisms are participating in this process? Certain bacteria like Anabaena, like blue-green algae. This blue-green algae is such an example, important example, which can convert the elemental form directly to the nitrites or the nitrates. Where these blue-green algae are present? They are present in the soil. So, blue-green algae, remember which class? It's a class of bacteria, that is cyanobacteria. Now these cyanobacteria, can you think of certain examples here? Anabaena, like nostoc, etc. Many more are there. Now these could be filamentous, or they can grow as a carpet colony. Now these blue-green algae, they are present in the soil and they help in the fixation of the nitrogen. They absorb the atmospheric nitrogen and then it converts it into the compounds of nitrogen. So these nitrogenous compounds are now easily absorbed by the roots. Roots definitely where they are present? In the soil itself. So once blue-green algae convert the nitrogen into usable form, it will be absorbed back by the root system. And then from roots, it will be transferred to the plants. So thus they help in the process. You remember there is another class also, a bacteria which is present in the root nodules of the plant, like leguminous plants. The root nodules, we can show you the picture here. These root nodules, there is a class, there are the plants in which roots are having some bead-like structures. These bead-like structures, they carry the bacteria, that is rhizobium. And these rhizobium, they can actually absorb the material from the material, that is nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen. It can absorb it and then it is converting it into the nitrogenous compounds. And then they are transferred to the roots, to the xylems, and then it is transported to the entire plant. So this is how the nitrogenous demand of the plant is being fulfilled. Similarly, the cyanobacteria picture shown here is an example of filamentous cyanobacteria. Now even they are growing and they are consuming these nitrogens and converting them to the oxides, which are further being used up by the plants. They can indirectly provide the other sources also, like ammonia or something, which are further being utilized by the other class of bacteria for further conversion. Now further, when this usable form has been absorbed, now what will happen to this absorbed nitrogen? So this absorbed nitrogen is further used for the synthetic processes. It will participate in the metabolism or the anabolic phase and will help in the synthesis of plant proteins or the other compounds, like as we have studied earlier, vitamins, nucleic acids, etc. Now what will happen? The plants are growing and they are following their own processes of photosynthesis and give nutrition or the nutrients which are being used up by the animals. So later these animals, they will feed upon the plants and these nitrogenous compounds, they will be transferred to the animals as well. Further, these proteins or the other nitrogenous compounds, they will be converted by the animals. It will be initially digested and then it is the raw materials provided by such breakdown would be used up for different other purposes. So now this process in which the absorbed form of nitrogen is used up for the synthesis of complex substances which are important for plants and animals. This process is actually known as assimilation. Now, after the assimilation, what will happen? After assimilation, there will be the next step taking place here, ammonification and nitrification. All these are taking place in the soil. What will happen? Now these plants and animals, they may die, right? Or whatever food they are using, after that what process will take place? Excretion. They will remove out the waste in the living condition, or they themselves will become waste when they will die. So ultimately what will happen? The nitrogen present in different forms in their body, it will be exposed to the environment again. Where? In the soil. So now such components, they will be acted upon by the bacteria and the fungi or the fungal type of organisms. Further, they are going to break down these forms into other nitrogenous form. Now, don't get confused with the term nitrogenous again and again and again. Let us clarify this particular point. Animals, they are doing which process? They are doing the excretion. Now, excretion. What is excretion? Excretion is the removal of nitrogenous waste from the body. How do these animals remove this nitrogenous waste from the body? In the form of urine. Now, there are different categories of animals which can remove this nitrogenous waste in different forms. For example, we, the human beings or the mammals, they generally remove out the waste, nitrogenous waste, in the form of urea. Urea, you all know, it is an organic compound. Then, if we compare birds, then how these birds remove it out? It is in the form of uric acid. You might have seen the droplets in your surrounding in the early morning or evening phases or at different time. So those are actually the uric acid, or we can say the urine which is containing the uric acid. And this uric acid will provide this particular color here. Which color? That is yellow to those droplets. Now, urea is back into the environment, or nitrogen is back into the environment. There are some other organisms also which can release these waste in the form of ammonia. Now you can see from this that from the animals, the nitrogen is back into the environment. Urea and uric acid, these are the complex organic forms, right? So further they are also being degraded into the ammonia. There is a group of bacteria or the fungi which is present in the soil. These will act upon these urea or the uric acid or other form of nitrogenous waste and will convert it completely into the ammonia. This ammonia is now further the another essential form or the compound present in the soil and is acted upon by the other organisms to convert it into the nitrogenous compound. Which compound? Ammonia, further converted into the oxides. Now this process here, in which the fossils or the dead material of the plants and animals or the excretory form of nitrogen from the animal or the plant body is converted to ammonia. This process is known as ammonification. In short, in sweet and single sentence, formation of ammonia from the nitrogenous waste of plants and animals by the action of bacteria and fungi present in the soil is known as ammonification. Once this ammonia is formed, then what will, now here is the example of the bacteria which will participate in certain processes. These are nitrobacter and nitrosomonas. Now these nitrobacter and nitrosomonas, they are going to act upon the ammonia. In the previous slide, here we said the nitrogenous waste is converted to ammonia. Now further ammonia is acted upon by the another group of bacteria and will convert it into the nitrite and the nitrates. So the one which is converting ammonia to the nitrite is nitrosomonas. The one which converts the nitrites produced by nitrosomonas is known as nitrobacter. So these are certain examples of the organisms, microorganisms, which can convert ammonia to nitrite or nitrite to nitrate and so on. Further, the next step takes place is denitrification. What do you mean by denitrification? That means conversion of nitrites and nitrates back to the elemental form. And this is done by the bacteria. Example is Pseudomonas. It may be a little bit harder for you to remember the names, but once you try, it will be very easy. So these Pseudomonas, they will actually act upon the nitrates and the nitrites present in the soil. The left out nitrate and nitrite will be the right word to say here. Why? Because the nitrates and the nitrites which were produced, they are reutilized by the plants and the remaining or the part of it will be converted into the elemental form of nitrogen, that is nitrogen gas, and this gas is further transferred back into the atmosphere, thus maintaining the initial 78% in the environment. Now, this is how the percentage of nitrogen would be maintained. Now, let us summarize this entire cycle with the help of this diagram. The first block here, it is showing the nitrogen in the atmosphere. So, in the atmosphere, nitrogen is present in the N2 form. Now, what will happen? You can see the plants over here. Now, leguminous plants, in the roots, they are having the nitrogen fixing bacteria. Example was rhizobium. Besides this, there are certain other soil bacteria like cyanobacteria present in the soil. So these organisms will utilize this atmospheric nitrogen and will convert it into the usable form. The bacteria which is present in the leguminous plants, it will convert it in the usable form and will transfer it to the roots and then to the entire plant, where it will be used for the different life-sustaining processes. Besides this bacteria present in the soil will absorb it and convert it in the form of ammonia. Now this is step in which the ammonia is being generated by the living soil microorganism is known as ammonification. Now further, this ammonia, it will be acted upon by the other class of bacteria, or it will be used up as the source of nutrient by the other organisms or the nitrifying bacteria. The example is nitrosomonas. We have seen the picture just before 2 slides, and this process is known as nitrification. So further, these organisms will release out nitrites. That means ammonia is used and is excreted out in the form of nitrite here. These nitrites, they will be used up by another class of nitrifying bacteria. Example is nitrobactor, and is converted in the form of nitrates. Now further, where these nitrites and nitrates are eliminated? In the soil. So these nitrates, after being released into the soil, they will be used up by the plants. So this is a step in which the plants are absorbing the nitrates from the soil and converting it in the important usable forms like proteins and so on. So this process is known as assimilation. Further, these plants, they are plants of the plant product, they are used up by the animals, and those nitrogenous compounds are being transported to the next level. Further, when they excrete out or when they die, then they are acted upon by the decomposers and they are being simplified. The waste is actually converted back into the ammonia. So this is how the ammonia is re-added into the soil. Further, which is utilized by the nitrifying bacteria and returned back to the plants. And this is how it is assimilated here from soil to plants and animals. Besides this assimilation, there is another class of bacteria, that is denitrifying bacteria. These denitrifying bacteria, they will use the nitrate and will convert it, will break down it in the form of nitrogen. So this is how the atmospheric nitrogen is formed. So this is how the level of nitrogen is maintained in the surrounding by the action of microorganisms. Now you can understand that how much important these living little microorganisms are in terms of domestic uses, in terms of medicinal uses, as well as at the environmental level too, increasing the soil fertility, or we can say in the formation of compost even at a industrial level. So this much for now. Next, we will continue with the harmful effects of these microorganisms. Till now, we have studied the advantages and we have considered them as a friend. But now let us see the another side of these little organisms. So thank you so much. We will meet soon in the next session. Till then, goodbye.